So why do we collect retro games? And kind of the quick bullet points are like, why not sell a game after you're done playing it? Everdrives exist. Why even own the real thing? And
When you asked why do you collect retro games, I actually did think about it, and I'm still having a bit of an existential crisis. Why am I doing this?
yes, well, some guys spend money on golf clubs. Some guys go away on fishing trips. This is what I do. This is what I spend my money on.
Yeah, I mean, in the 90s, I worked at a game store during kind of an interesting time period. Then I just sort of liked video games, so I brought home a lot of weird stuff. I mean, I have some things that like you will not find an eBay listing for that were from the game store. Like that's pretty cool. Like, and again, it would be like, oh, there's this game I really like, and we have a sign for it. Well, I'm going to take that home.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
after we're done promoting the game, I can take that thing home, right? Or for whatever reason, Nintendo gave us all Donkey Kong sweatshirts, but it was against like dress code to wear them at our company, so we just took them home. And the particular one I'm thinking of, I don't think I've ever seen an eBay listing for.
Nice.
Although I did get a Super Mario RPG T-shirt that I just straight up wore for years, and I made the mistake of looking that up on eBay one day, and like I should have just put that in a vault.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would say the big downside to working at a games for the 90s is that I was there when like the concept of trading in games started, and it sort of established this thought that old games were worthless. When I'm at the store, they're like, oh yeah, all NES games are worth $1 to us. It makes you think, okay, well, I don't think these are not going to go up in value. I don't have, I'm working at a game store. I clearly don't have a large home. I got rid of a lot of stuff then too. The other plus, I always liked weird 16-bit CD games, like weird FMV games and weird RPGs, and I still like those games. Like when Limited Run Games does a reprint of Night Trap or Double Switch or whatever, I always end up buying it. And I do actually still legitimately like those games. So I would get them all cheap. Now I have a huge pile of them, and those things are super expensive. The flip side to that is I also bought a lot of CD games along the way that are just awful. They're just objectively bad games. And if I was smarter, I would get rid of them while prices are all inflated.
I started working in 94-ish. I would pretty much, when I got a job, spend most of my money on video games or music. And, between 1996 when I graduated and 2004, I sold all my old computers, my consoles, my games. And in around 1996, I traded my Turbo Duo with 10 plus games for a modded PS1 with like 3 games. That was a very, very bad decision that I still regret. You end up buying back all that stuff. And I think I realized, I was probably around 2005, which is only 1 year after, I kept selling all my stuff, that like I could buy like a Mac Color Classic on eBay for like $10 shipped. I think that's when I realized like, oh man, I could get all this stuff back really cheap now. Around 2009, started missing, my TurboGrafx 16, the Dreamcast, my Apple stuff. And it was around then too when I saw on Craigslist, like, oh wait, I can buy a whole arcade cabinet for cheap and just fix it up. Yeah, and the fact that they appreciate in value more than 401k or any stocks, and definitely NFTs, that doesn't hurt either.
Right now, if I just started lighting $100 bills on fire, that would outperform my 401k.
Yes, exactly.
I would say I started thinking about the idea of collecting after we bought our first house, which was like the early zeros. And we decided, my wife and I decided we'd have like kind of one room with like our computers, like, 'cause we both had to do a little bit of work on the side, right? We'll just make it like a combined video game and Star Wars room. And, in 2001 up till probably 2010, you could just go to yard sales and just walk away with boxes and boxes of this stuff for next to nothing. During those years, we went and we got a ton of stuff. Enough to where I have a room filled with retro game stuff, and she has a room now filled with Star Wars stuff. But now, if you try and go and find any of that stuff, it is bad times. So I'm kind of glad I got into it when I did, although I'm sort of at this place right now where it's like, okay, maybe I should just focus on like a couple series or things that I actually really like, and the stuff that I will not play, but is super inflated in value. Maybe I should just dump that.
I'm trying to really, really beef up my 3DS collection.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many cool things on there that the gameplay on it is just so much different, than anything that it's hard to port that stuff over. I've really been collecting PS4 and Xbox of those, physical media, just because I never thought PS1 or PS2 games would be expensive, but wow, are they?
I have some eBay search lists. Like I at some point could go through like the things I have on my eBay list that I'm tracking. And one of them is there's a X-Files game for PlayStation 2. Don't try and buy that.
I'm not buying PS2 stuff.
Well, I thought there's really not a lot of X-Files games.
Mhm.
Like getting a complete collection of X-Files games is pretty easy until you get to that one.
And then you have to remortgage your house.
Yeah, actually, it's like $100, but $100 for a PS2 game seems like kind of crazy to me. While we were talking about this, I was like writing down good collecting ideas if someone wanted to get into collecting. Here's what I think you can do: trying to collect the launch games for every system.
That's a good idea. I like that idea.
Yeah, that one is not too hard. If you can compromise and in some cases take a reprint. Like I'm not going to get Luigi's Mansion in the launch day box, but I can get Luigi's Mansion in like the GameCube Greatest Hits box.
Mm-hmm.
Collecting the last game made for every system is also not really that hard, with a few outliers.
There's a few that are really expensive, I think.
Yeah, there are a few that are like Spider-Man for 32X. But I have bought a lot of like last games for systems, I mean, for just a couple dollars, because a lot of them are like sports and Just Dance games. If you're just like, I want to create a collection of something, like, I don't know who's listening today that has not thought about collecting games, but I would say like pick a theme. Like if I did it all over again, I would just be like, I'm going to get games by this publisher or from like this series and nothing else.
Or even like, I've thought about, starting a podcast of like all the Star Wars games, like a game by game of that, like collecting all Star Wars or Star Trek games, or, I mean, there's a ton of Dungeons and Dragons games.
Ooh, there's like 3 ET games total. That's an easy one.
You could get
I have
all those.
2/3 of that. I'm not even trying.
I think right now, the only system you can almost try to get a complete library of would be 32X. Now, it still would be kind of expensive, but there's not that many games.
Yeah, the problem is there's a couple super expensive outlets. Like trying to get Pitfall is really expensive, and Blackthorn is probably pretty expensive. Atari 7800 I've heard is an easy one to get a full collection of.
Okay.
Again, with maybe 1 or 2 outliers.
But I mean,
That's what I would recommend. Yeah, come up with a theme you like. Yeah, like every Pac-Man game is kind of is probably a doable one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's 100 games, but I don't think any of them are really, really rare. Collecting all Laserdisc games or ports of Laserdisc games is actually not a real hard one either.
Yeah, because they're ported to every system.
They port to everything. Yeah, you can get a lot of Dragon's Lair ports. But again, I would say you want to pick something you actually are interested in.
And I would also say if you want to start collecting now, DS prices are really starting to go up. If you get in like right now, you might be okay. Like you've missed the Game Boy Advance train. That one is long gone. Those prices are insane. And then eventually PS4, specifically delisted games, and there's more than you would think.
I think you could collect all Beavis and Butthead games pretty easily.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Don't try to do Mega Man games.
That's a tough one, yeah. The best collecting strategy, and I think this is a real legitimate one, you just have to outlive all the Gen Xers. Because video games from the 80s and 90s are going to be worthless again. Like, I assume Elvis memorabilia peaked sometime in like 1995 and has never recovered. Maybe, I guess there's an Elvis movie coming out now, so maybe there'll be some interest again. But you get what I'm saying. Like, if you're into some sort, like I watch a lot of like estate sale sites. You can look at the galleries online before you go. There's a lot of like baby boomer junk being sold cheap right now. But that's my best tip for collecting: is just outlive everybody else.
And only collect what you want to play. And that's why I collect physical stuff. One of our notes here is like EverDrives exist. Like you don't need this stuff. You could still play the games, but A, I like having them, and B, a PS4 EverDrive does not exist, and they delist those games sometimes, so I like having the physical thing. And they look nice on the wall when I'm not playing them. And I'm looking through our notes to see if we missed anything. Oh yeah, just one other thing. I'll sometimes go on, we call them retro adventures, and like me and a buddy or two will hit up like 3 or 4 retro stores, whether they're like it's like Nerd Out, like a toy store, or if it's a retro game store, and then maybe get some beers afterwards and stuff. And it's mostly an excuse just to hang out, but isn't golf also?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it also can bring people together. But yeah, any closing thoughts on spending all your money on retro collections?
I mean, most of the stuff I buy now is limited run games. That's kind of what I spend money on now. Like I bought 3 copies of Quake from them recently. They released it on 3 different systems, and I have a shelf here of all the Quake games. So
nice.
how could I not get different iterations of the exact same thing?